Help support the show by going to the Amazon.com search bar on footballsamerica.com when doing your online shopping. There are no charges to you, just support, and it will take you right back to the Amazon website. This month, Football's America podcast listeners will get free shipping on any order over $35 when they go to footballsamerica.com/Amazon. Again, that's footballsamerica.com/Amazon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
And I am Kyle, and today we are very pleased to be joined by Laurie Lattimore-Volkmann, the assistant coach, which probably means assistant editor from Mile High Report, the incredibly amazing and often outstanding Broncos SB Nation team page. Laurie is here to go through the season with us and maybe look a little bit ahead into next year. Laurie, I am very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into the Broncos, let's talk a little bit about you, largely because this is going to be the first chance for a lot of the fans from your page to get to know you a little bit better. So let's start with, how long have you been a fan of the Denver Broncos?
I am 44 years old, and I've been a fan for 44, or at least 38 when I was sort of conscious enough to know what was going on with football.
That's one of the more honest answers. It's a lot better than since I was 6 and not saying your age. So
it's true.
Which has happened on our show.
And then just dead silence. Awkward. I love it. Okay. So what is it that drove you to be a writer for this page? I mean, what is the motivation for you to be professional or semi-professional, depending on your own definition?
I am totally professional.
That's right.
I was invited to join the blog almost exactly a year ago because I just wrote my own blog about Peyton Manning following the 2013, the 2014 Super Bowl, the disaster that was against Seattle. And that blog got so much attention, kind of went viral on social media. And so the editor asked me if I might want to write for the Broncos SB Nation blog. And it was funny because I remember thinking I might be worried I wouldn't have enough blog posts to write every month. And I've ended up writing about 20 a month. So clearly I've had maybe even more than enough to say.
So outside chance your employer's wondering what's going on with all your time.
Right. What are you doing?
Well, she's always at the keyboard. Something's going on. Progress, getting it done.
Right. Yes. It is very definitely a sort of midnight to 3 a.m. sort of blogging experience too. So. And
you actually got to meet Peyton Manning, I see.
Yes.
You're just talking about it going viral, and I was like, well, if it went viral, I'm going to find it. And I just punched in your name and Peyton Manning, and here comes up this webpage, and it talks about how you met with Peyton Manning, and he got to kind of address your blog post. And so,
yeah, it was very cool.
What?
That's pretty outstanding. That's high praise, I guess, from us.
Well, high praise, but it also kind of shows our incompetence. Like, let's have a guest on, do no research on them. But you're laughing, so good sign. Moving on. All happy here. Okay.
That's right.
As you said, you've been a fan of this team your whole life, or at least long enough to form memories. So,
right.
Looking back, all those Bronco years, strongest memory, good, bad, personal, otherwise, what is it you think of when you think of being a Bronco fan for yourself?
Honestly, Super Bowl 32 was awesome, but truly, I think my best memories were the 2 AFC championships that we won in 87 and 88, and beating the Browns the way we did. And I was in high school when that happened, and the drive and the fumble and all those famous Elway plays, like, you cannot script that. There's no way that's an actual TV movie. And he did it, and it was amazing. And even though Super Bowl 32 was just awesome and one of my favorite memories ever, I think the games that we played for those AFC championships were just so incredible and such an emotional roller coaster, and I just could not believe we won. That they will be emblazoned in my head forever, in my memory forever, and it will be like those were the quintessential Broncos right there. 99 yards in under a couple minutes, coming from behind, no reason to win at all, and we still did. I was hooked. There was no way I could ever be a fan of anything else after something like that.
So one thing Kyle and I do during the show is we actually have the ability to talk to each other via chat while you're talking as well, while we're listening to you. And one thing we already noticed is, you are only the second woman interview that we've had, and I know that might sound sexist. I don't know. I'm pretty dense, so I don't know if that does or not. But the only other one we had was from the Falcons, and she was also full of energy like you. And one thing that people don't understand is how much harder a lot of times women have to work in a sports industry. Yeah. And that means that you really know your stuff, because I was asking you before the show, do you know this person? And because you said you weren't really comfortable with the draft stuff because that's not really your thing, but I'm asking you about these people and you know every single one of these people. And I'm like, well, we're going to be fine. I don't know why you didn't think you could do this. And
it's fairly normal for us whenever we're talking to somebody and it's a woman, like, oh crap, they know so much more than us. Like, I don't even need any additional details. If you're comfortable showing up, not only do you know more than me, you know enough more than me to where I just try and keep my head down and, not be noticed. And that's 5 minutes in, it's pretty apparent that, yeah, you've got like not just the knowledge, but the genuine love for the game. And that is genuinely exciting to talk to people who love football on that like core level. That is awesome. I do love it. I am kind of an obsessive Broncos fan. I've not lived in Colorado for about 20 years because of college and moving around. And I have kind of made it a crusade to make everybody around me at least know that I'm a Broncos fan. And if they can join in or they don't have to, but if they're going to be around me, they're just going to have to deal with it. And I have 2 little boys, and they literally wear a Denver Broncos jersey every single day to school, which I'm very proud of it. That is pretty dang awesome. And yeah.
All right. So we could sit here and talk about you, and we would love to, by the way, just sit here and talk about you for an hour. We could do that if you want, but unfortunately our fans aren't going to want that. They're going to be like, oh man, are they ever going to get to the Broncos? Yeah. And so let's get into the 2014 season. We're going to kind of take a time travel trip back here. Okay. So stay with me.
All right.
The Broncos were coming off a defending AFC championship, and they come off a fairly brutal Super Bowl loss as well. The defense was to blame for the most part, being unable to stop a turtle, let alone another NFL offense. But many argue that it was the curse of Peyton Manning being unable to do it in the big moments. So you fast forward through the offseason, they make considerable changes to the defense as well as get some key players back, signing guys like DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, TJ Ward, and then they add all of those guys to Raheem Moore, Von Miller, and Chris Harris, and the recently acquired Terrence Knighton, who has now moved on.
Right.
They had gotten serious about the defense with an already incredibly talented offense that featured top-tier talent in nearly every position, to include offensive line, all directed by the sheriff himself, Peyton Manning. Let's be honest. It really didn't seem fair either. They come out of the gate swinging, going 7-2 in the first 9 games, delivering knockout blows one after another to teams while Peyton breaks records and dances around during practice, losing only to the eventual Super Bowl participants, Seahawks and Patriots, in that stretch. Then the tough loss to the Rams happened, and something changed. The game plan took a drastic change to a running like crazy offense, and although you continued to win convincingly for the most part, there was a strange feeling watching a team led by a Hall of Famer not feature him. Right. So they finished the season 12-4. They head into the playoffs, where Peyton did not play well, and the injuries had piled up over the last half of the season, took too much of a toll on the entire team. The loss to his old team was tough enough for Bronco fans, and had the talking heads, drunk with Peyton retirement talks. Looking back on all of that, how did you as the fan view the season? Was it a success, a failure? Many people have coined it that it was. Are there any small successes we can take away, or would you just like me to shut up now?
No, absolutely. I think it's, I would say the best word to describe the season was disappointment. I don't think it was a failure. I mean, if you read any of my stuff on the blog, I'm always kind of the positive thinking one, the one like, come on guys, don't give up, don't stop being a fan. And I kind of get ribbed for that from a lot of the readers. But I do feel that way. Like, when you think about how hard it is to go to a Super Bowl, how hard it is to make it through a season, to get back into the playoffs, we are spoiled in Denver as Broncos fans, especially over the last, 25 years. And so it's great to have the expectation that you're always going to go to the playoffs or you're going to, make a run for the Super Bowl. But it is so hard to get back there. And when we lost the Super Bowl in 2014, when we lost Super Bowl 48, I remember thinking, it doesn't just suck because we lost. It sucks because to get that close, like, it is so hard to get through all the ups and downs you have in a season with injuries and other teams playing really well and who knows what, and get there. And it's like, you can't just assume just because you have great guys, you're going to get back there. And I started writing for the Broncos blog in April or May last year, so kind of in the beginning of the off season. And we get to the summertime and everyone's getting excited because we got all those guys. Like you mentioned, we got DeMarcus Ware and we got Aqib Talib and we got TJ Ward, we got Emmanuel Sanders, who turned out to be a huge star. And so it seemed like there should be nothing stopping us. And yet, even after the first 3 games, if you listen to some of the Broncos fans on our blog after those first 2 games, we won, but they were pissed. They were mad that we didn't blow anybody out. We never should have let the Colts get back in the game in that very first Sunday night game. And Kansas City, we got really lucky because Terrence Knighton batted down what would have been a touchdown pass probably and saved the game. And to a lot of the fans, at least on our blog, they were angry. We should have won those games 35-7 and, 25-3. So there was this super high expectation that we were going to be great and we were going to blow everyone away. All we needed was that defense. And when we didn't do that, everyone was disappointed, even early on, even when we had a winning record. And then when we hit that mid stretch, and especially that loss to the Rams, I think fans were dejected. And I honestly think the team, we can get into that, but I really think they started playing that way. They didn't play with the kind of the spirit and the fire that they needed to overcome whatever adversity they had, or, having an early bye week and having injuries and all those things that just happened. So I think overall it was a disappointment, but part of that is just because we had such high expectations that I personally believe were a little unfair, a little too hard to really believe you're definitely going to be able to do that, given all the things that can happen in a season.
Well, yeah, but like Ron said, the team was so stacked that our assumption was that Papa John had started paying off the commissioner to look the other way. It was like the only answer that seemed rational.
I know. And we thought the same thing when I was writing stories all through the summer. It was so optimistic how mean and tough our defense was going to be. We finally had, now with Von Miller back and healthy and DeMarcus Ware on the other side, those quarterbacks were going to be just so afraid of us. I think quarterbacks, they got sacked a few times, but basically Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, they weren't really all that dominant, not the way we expected them to be, and not the way I think their talent could lead them to be. So it was definitely a letdown, given the personnel. But you can't, you can have the best team and obviously, like, we had great team. And if every other little thing doesn't go right, it can still hurt you. And you can also have a not as great a team and catch some breaks and make it to the Super Bowl and win, like the Patriots.
Almost passed me by on that one. I like, wait a minute.
Man, I could not click my unmute button fast enough.
That was
I was like leaned back in my chair, just enjoying the narrative, and all of a sudden she throws the Patriots one in there, and I was like, "Oh, sit up! Click the mute button."
That was, oh man, that was some stealth joking right there. All right, I like it. Okay, and as you're saying, all the talent in the world, you still have to execute, and a lot of that you got to look fair or not at the head coach, and generally, everybody is under the impression that John Fox is a fantastic head coach. He can get the most out of people. He can take Tim Tebow to the playoffs. And that, I mean, there's talent elsewhere on the team, but that's still a head coach who can minimize the deficiencies on a team. As he said, it was a disappointment. Now, with the exit, it still raises a lot of questions. Nobody's 100% certain, aside from John Fox and John Elway, the true reasons as to what happened. But when Elway gets up there and says, we disagreed with the future of the team, that raises a lot of just crazy, like you are just opening up the floodgates of discussion right there. Now, it could be that nothing short of a Super Bowl win was expected, or at least an appearance. It could be that just the team didn't perform well. And even if there was greatness, like you said, you're not getting the most out of the guys. Our personal theory was that John Fox was maybe a little bit upset with Peyton Manning's play, and John Elway had brought Peyton Manning in and wanted to keep him around. Now, I mean, as I said, it's all conjecture, but I would definitely want to hear your opinion. Right? Oh, yeah. But let's get your take. What is the defining factor that led to John Fox leaving the team?
I wouldn't say it was a Peyton Manning a disagreement over how to use or what to do with Peyton Manning. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Peyton Manning and John Fox certainly butted heads. I would guess, and I think it's a somewhat educated guess, that the real debacle between Fox and Elway had a lot to do with the mood of the team. That's not a very good word, but the leading the team to that next level of intensity. What John Fox was great at, and what we needed him for, and what he did, and what he will be very good at the Bears with, is minimizing the dissension, bringing people back into the fold, getting people kind of on the same page, and feeling good about the team and team oriented, and he does a lot of good sort of bonding things and bringing the team together to kind of have this common goal. But he didn't seem to have that real fire and intensity that could take guys from feeling good about what they accomplished to being really fired up and maybe even a little angry about not getting it done, and really wanting to make sure that they didn't lose, or they didn't lose badly, or that that they really put it all out there. And that, if you listen to, if you followed any of the rhetoric that came right out of those 2 weeks after the Indianapolis Colts game, and certainly after Fox left the team and they were hiring Kubiak, Elway kept saying we want to go down kicking and screaming. I don't know if that made it all the way to Virginia and Alaska, but that was pretty hot in Denver. And that was his thing. Our guys, they went out there against the Colts, and it didn't even look like they cared about playing very hard or not playing very well. And I'm sure that wasn't true, but you're right.
It looked like it. It did look like it, though.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, but I'm totally biased, and it's sometimes hard to pull back and wonder what the general fan would think of how the Broncos looked, other than bad. But did they look like they weren't playing very well, like trying very hard? That's how it felt to us, to me, and I think to Elway. I think it was like, Fox didn't have that. There wasn't enough preparation to go beyond getting to the playoffs. We have a ton of talent, no doubt, and we made it where we did based a lot on talent and getting by. But when you really need a very strategic thinker, a guy to really prepare the team to kind of fight and to really handle adversity in the game, Fox didn't seem to be very good at that. It'll be really interesting. I'm going to talk to you guys a year from now and see if that shows up at all in Chicago.
Well, first of all, I like how you dictate that you're going to be back on the show in a year. That's awesome.
Very happy with that already.
No one has ever come on here and been like, well, I'm going to be back here in a year, and then we'll see what goes on. Everybody's always like, well, I hope you guys have me back on, or we'll extend the olive branch of telling somebody to be back on.
It's always that, yeah, good luck, whatever. Have fun with your little internet nerd thing.
I wanted to touch real quick on the John Fox thing, being a Bears fan and being so in tune with everything that goes on there. My thoughts on John Fox's exit is what Kyle was talking about, which is that we think that Peyton Manning was getting older. He had a lot of trouble getting outside the numbers and stuff, and we're going to get to all of that here in just a little bit. But we believe that he didn't want to have Peyton Manning anymore. He wanted to go after a quarterback or in the draft, or if he was going to keep Peyton Manning another year, he still wanted to get somebody in replacement or work on transitioning. And John Elway said absolutely not. And so that was the difference in what caused the parting of ways. I do disagree with you on one point, and that is that he doesn't bring the fight to the team, because I think his time with the Panthers definitely shows where he has fight, because you think of all the years that they had to climb out in Carolina with Jake Delhomme at quarterback and guys, nobodies. I mean, do you remember anybody who was on that Super Bowl team with the Panthers that got beat by the Patriots other than Jake Delhomme? No one. And so if there's anybody that can put, like you said, put a group of guys together to get them really in tune with the team and say, this is what we need. And if there's any team in the NFL right now that needs, some glue applied to everyone, it's definitely the Bears, because there's no dissension there or anything. Jeez. But and my final thought on is if he can take Tim Tebow to a playoff game, then he can definitely take Jay Cutler to a playoff game.
Win a playoff game.
Then yes, except the thing is, Tebow is the kind of guy he's a team player. That guy is going to do what you tell him to do, which I get this, Jay Cutler's not necessarily that guy. Tim Tebow is not as talented as Jay Cutler. I mean, so to be able to kind of maybe talk him through that whole thing is take some good coaching. But Cutler's, the thing that Fox hopefully can do for Cutler is to just calm his ass down.
Wow, jeez.
We had Jay Cutler. I mean,
so accurate.
I was upset when Cutler left, and that started a whole chain of events for the Broncos that with some very dark years. It was like 3, not dark years. You had 3. The Bears have been awful for 15. So. Well, that's the thing, is I said we were spoiled. 3 years to us is like an eternity. And what's funny is
there are Jags fans everywhere right now just wanting to fire a missile at you.
The thing with we had, other than the Super Bowl last year, we haven't been to the Super Bowl in years, and with Elway, it was like, it was expected. Even if we were going to get blown away, we're still like, we've got Elway. We've always got Elway. We're gonna blow the AFC away because we've got Elway, and we still think that way, even though he's in the front office. It's like, we've got Elway. He can solve all our problems. He will draft the people we need. He'll pay the money for the people we need. So there, you will see it if you look at our blog ever. This thing TYJE all the time. Thank you, John Elway. Thank you, John Elway. In John Elway we trust. Like, the guy is a god in Denver, and it all comes, even though we didn't actually, we only won 2 Super Bowls with him, but we were always in the game, and that's been different the last couple of years. Even though the last 2, we certainly have been in the game with Peyton Manning and the other guys in the team. But I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic, but when Jay Cutler left, and because of this spat with McDaniels, like, no one knew what to do. We wanted Jay Cutler to stay, but then he was being a baby, and then it's like, all right, just get rid of him. But no one really knew if McDaniels knew what he was doing. And then McDaniels turned out to be a complete jackass too. And it was like, who knows what was right? But Jay Cutler has not proved that he can really step up to be the kind of leader and the kind of guy he's got to be if he really wants to be a Pro Bowl, a really good, high level NFL quarterback. So maybe John Fox can help him.
You brought up something we really wanted to touch on, and you gave us a great window into the mind of a Denver fan. Thank you, John Elway. I assumed that, like, when South Park has the whole sacrificing kids to the provider and it's a statue of John Elway, that's a joke. You're making me think that is possible.
No.
2 men enter, 1 man leave, all that good stuff. I mean, John Elway, some of his moves are kind of head scratching in the moment, but then it turns out great. I mean, all the money on the D last year, and like you said, maybe you didn't get the great performance, but they're there and they have a chance to bring it in. And a lot of these guys at 60% are better than the majority of the league at 100%. You know, Peyton Manning, I think that's a no-brainer. A lot of people didn't like dumping Tebow, but when you get first ballot Hall of Famer, you know, a lot of his moves are looking not just good, but great.
Right. And last year's defense, we like to blame the people who are not there. So we like to blame Jack Del Rio for that one because of his scheme and how he used some of those guys, you know, not using Aqib Talib in the best way he could and not rushing, you know, Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, you know, as often as he could. So a lot of the critics and a lot of the critique, I should say, of the defense falls fairly or not. We like to put it on Jack Del Rio. And of course, since he's gone, it's easy. We can blame him.
Yeah, like you're blaming the guy who's now the Raiders. Like, that's not biased at this point. Come on.
It's so awesome, though.
I mean, like, you guys are sitting there like, oh, I don't like this guy. Oh, he's the Raiders? Good. We can hate him twice a year. Fantastic.
We can hate him all year long, but we can really hate him twice a year.
Also, wasn't that 2 years in a row that you had a coordinator leave the Broncos to go to a division rival?
Yeah, right, because Mike McCoy went to the Chargers. Is that who you
referring
to? Yep.
Now,
yeah, we love to get rid of him, I guess, send him away. Just so we can battle him, see who's better.
Well, then that raises questions about John Elway. Like, what is he doing to these poor guys? Are they like, you know what? No, I ain't gonna stick it to you, old man. I ain't gonna go somewhere. Like, I don't think he's that abrasive or anything like that. There's rumors about every GM and all that, but
right.
One thing I know that John Elway was like the key for was bringing in Peyton Manning. Peyton said up and down, I needed to go somewhere where I felt totally comfortable. John Elway makes me feel comfortable. He knows where I'm at. And Peyton Manning he's gotten you to 1 Super Bowl. He can possibly get you to another one, but we have to be raising these questions. As a Colts fan, I love Peyton Manning. He's the reason I'm a Colts fan, and I love him in Bronco Orange. I root for him every time he's not playing the Colts. But
that's been pretty good, working out pretty well for you lately, actually. You're getting the best of both worlds.
I like I told you before we started recording, Ron and I both got to see Peyton's homecoming in Indy. It was a warm welcome and a beautiful game and great football to be seen.
And the thing that they played, the montage thing that they played before the game, and I mean they had him crying, and it was when he took the field and everybody in the stadium stood and clapped. I mean, for 10 or 15 minutes that happened.
It was a long time, but obviously well-deserved. I mean, this is a guy who not only breaks records and all that, but this is the reason Lucas Oil Stadium exists is Peyton Manning. The reason the combine is in Indy is Peyton Manning. The reason that everybody in Denver is gaining weight due to pizza is Peyton Manning. Papa John's on every street corner.
It's true.
I mean, I don't know whose idea it was to put Fritos on it. That was bad. But, aside from that, doing some things right. Now, looking at him, definitely injury concerns this past year. Like Ron said, after that Rams game, something wasn't right. We know now that he was dealing with leg issues. If you're not able to plant, you can't do things. I think the most telling moment for me watching Peyton play and going, this is something is not just wrong, it's catastrophically wrong. Like alarm bells are ringing, is watching him in that playoff game against the Colts. And he's got about 25 yards of just open field ahead of him. And he throws the ball to a contested Emmanuel Sanders and it goes incomplete. And okay, now it's change downs. We lost it. That's not there. And part of me was excited. Okay, the Colts are getting the ball, but much more was sad. I mean,
right. It's hard to watch Peyton Manning go down like that, isn't it?
It's deeply disturbing. You can't watch your heroes struggle and feel good. Nobody wants to see, their dad struggling after surgery. Nobody wants to see, somebody that they have held near and dear to them struggle. And I know for some Bronco fans, he's just the current quarterback, and that's reasonable. That's very reasonable. He's not always going to be a Bronco. I remember reading when he first came on somebody's obituary. He's like, I hate the guy. He's not going to Bronco at heart. Get rid of him. Which, aggressive, but I mean, he's dead. There's no rebuttal. Where is the level of concern right now? He's returning at least for another year. That's the way it looks. Is this the right move for him in your mind?
Absolutely. I think it is. And that's not necessarily rational. Also, I'll throw that out there. My disclaimer. But I was an athlete, and I actually, competed injured my whole college career. And I totally understand. And I was at a much different level. It wasn't NFL professional football, but it's hard to know you can do better, to know you've got more left, and to not have the opportunity to put that out there at the end, and to not play your best and have that be the way it finishes. And so I actually wrote a kind of an op-ed piece after the season was over, addressing that a little bit and saying, really not telling him what he should do, but mentioning like the things to think about. But the only reason he should come back, or should have decided to come back, is to really believe that he still can compete at a high level, because somebody like him is not going to want to kind of fade out and be an irrelevant quarterback for a couple of years, or a year, or, even just the end of the season. And I think last year was extremely frustrating for him, not just because we lost and it wasn't the season we wanted, but because he's a competitor and he didn't get to compete. He didn't get to really be the guy that he is known for being. I believe that the injuries were the biggest part of that. And so, yes, he's old, but I made this case all season. He was old in September. To think that in November he was suddenly that much older. He was 3 months older, and he was 38. He was old when we got him. So that whole argument isn't strong enough for me. I get the argument that the older you are, the harder a long season can be, and the harder January is when you're 38 versus January when you're 27. But I think he can do it, and I'm glad he came back to make that case. I hope and I believe, with Kubiak as our coach, that we're not going to be relying on Peyton Manning to carry the offense. I think that will help sustain him for the whole year, for the whole season. But he is going to have to adjust his thinking. He is going to have to kind of maybe work on his ego a little bit, that he doesn't have to have total control, that he doesn't have to manage the whole game, that it shouldn't rely on his arm, because we can do that in September and October. We probably obviously can't do that in January and February if he's been doing that the entire season. It's a grueling season. So he's going to have to be very, very smart about how he manages his body and his arm and his workouts. But I believe it was the right thing to do to come back. I think he's the guy for us. I think he's still the one. If we want to have our best chance at the playoffs in the Super Bowl, he was the guy. Brock Osweiler might be the guy. I don't know. I have zero idea because nobody does. We've never seen him play hardly. But whether Brock has something to really offer, it's not going to be this season. He's not ready, in my opinion, to really take us to the next level. So I think it was the right decision for Elway to make sure Manning knew that the offer was open, that the team was his, that it was up to him to decide they wanted him back. And I think it was the right thing for Peyton to do. As long as he believed he could be healthy, I think he made the right decision, deciding, hey, I'm going to come back. I want to compete. I want to go out with my NFL career being the guy that I know I can and that I should be known for, because I'm a Hall of Famer. So there.
For the first time in his career, Peyton took a pay cut. That was, having known the guy and knowing how much he has just had this mental connection between getting paid and respect. Seeing him take a pay cut, it floored me. I refused to believe it when Ron first told me. I was at work. I'm like, no, it didn't happen. You're a liar of things impossible. I'm not doing this. And he takes a pay cut. Now, a lot of this, okay, we're accommodating Demaryius Thomas, but as you said, now we're looking at legacy. And Tom Brady has got ring number, 5? Or, 3 adjusted for inflation. But we go ahead and see that he's got to struggle to stay afloat in that who is the best of all time game. And it's very, very weird seeing him. I think you're absolutely right in saying that he'll keep playing until he gets to the point where he won't be a backup. He's not going to do that, but he's definitely not invincible anymore. And now there's that additional question, like you said, Brock Osweiler, he's up for contract this year. So
yeah,
now there's definitely this fear going ahead. If Peyton Manning plays this year, it could very well be his last. The guy who's been the backup, he's in a contract year, and he might well want to go somewhere else that he feels is going to give him more of a chance. He might want to stay in Denver. We don't know. But what is the future of this position? I mean, it's really hard to just say you're going to draft a guy because Peyton Mannings don't come along every year.
Right. Yeah, I mean, hardly ever, honestly.
Apparently only when the Colts have the number 1. I mean, they got Elway, they got Peyton, they got Luck. People hate it. I find it hilarious. So the one I want to know is, when is Andrew Luck going to be a Bronco? Because you guys have got to be looking forward to that one coming next.
Right. When's his contract up?
He's got a while.
A couple of years?
He's got a while.
5, 6 years?
Well, they just extended his 5th-year option, and they will franchise tag him 3 years in a row if they got to.
If you can get him, I don't think you understand the joy I would feel. Like, that's sour grapes. That's what that is. Yes, it is.
We suffered through Trent Richardson. Come on, man. There's a little bit of give and take.
I've had to deal with Jay Cutler for 6 years, and I dealt with Lovie Smith for 10.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's worse.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Everybody that hears, every time I say that, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, man." There's just like, do I need to call a hotline or something for you? Like,
but you do still have. Do you ever pull out the Super Bowl shuffle videos? Do you do that every now and then?
Yeah, when I feel super depressed, I do. And then after that, I'm just like, you know what? This gallon of bleach looks pretty good.
It's a great answer when you're talking to like Jaguar fans or Brown fans, and then they'll be like, "Yeah, how old were you when that happened? A year old? Yeah. How's that emotion working out for you?" It's like, yeah, it's the end of that argument. So now that to bring it back, jarringly get back on track. Where is the future of quarterback for the Denver Broncos?
Well, I have no idea, and I'm not totally sure the Broncos do. I mean, I think that they're looking, at the draft this year to draft potential, because I'm not sure they totally trust Brock, because they haven't signed his extension yet. It's tough, because who knows what really went into last year, whether Gase didn't want to play Brock, if nobody kind of wanted to broach that with Peyton and say, hey, we need to get Brock some snaps. I don't know if you guys paid attention to the game, and I wish I remembered the team we were playing, but
where he got snubbed. He got snubbed hardcore by Peyton.
Yeah. Was it the Jet? Who were we playing? We were ahead, so it had to have been.
It was the one that you beat like 42-17 or something like that.
Yeah. So it's such a great, video clip, and it was such a great gif where, Brock actually throws his hand up like, oh man, again, the guy gets it again. So, I'm sure Brock's frustrated, but he's got to know, he had to know when Peyton was brought in, that he's not seeing the field unless Peyton is, injured. So the future, I don't actually think it's Brock Osweiler, but I don't really know what Elway's thinking. I do think that, maybe they'll they'll try him out, but they'll be bringing in guys to compete with him for sure. And, maybe we'll see what we can get out of free agency in a couple of years. My personal hope is that this is Peyton Manning's last year. Unless he has like this incredible season and it seems so obvious he can do another one, I would like to see him go out on top. I'd like to see him have a great year and then say, all right, NFL, thank you very much. I'm done. I'm the greatest of all time. I'm out of here.
Well, if he wins a Super Bowl, I think at this point, if he ends up going to a Super Bowl and winning, I think that I don't think it'll be much other than, I think his speech, honestly, at the end will include, this is my retirement speech as well. So.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure though, to kind of say, I'll retire if we go to the Super Bowl. And I almost wonder.
Well, it worked for Ray Lewis.
It did. Well, he did it. It was
and
like
Elway.
The beginning of the playoffs, right? I mean, he said that it wasn't the beginning of the season. He said it right at the end of I think he said it before their last game of the regular season.
Let's just be clear though. The last time a Broncos quarterback said, "This will be my last season," that team repeated and won a Super Bowl.
Are you asking?
Definitely a good.
No, I'm not.
No, that's just really nice.
I mean, I'm just saying is the last time a quarterback came out and said, "This is going to be my last year," John Elway took the team back to a Super Bowl and won.
Oh yeah, right. I know. And then they even talked about a three-peat. Can you imagine? I wonder if Elway just laughed at first. I mean, he might have. I'm sure he considered it a little bit, but I bet after that Super Bowl and he went home and his body was aching, he's probably like, ha, right. No way. I mean, I think his arm was hanging by a thread. I'm pretty sure by that time.
Now, obviously, quarterback is a concern, but having a head coach that there's faith in has to alleviate that. You got Gary Kubiak in there. He was a Bronco himself, backing up John Elway, then offensive coordinator. The Cougs has been in Denver before.
Right.
He is no stranger to the way things operate there. There's all of Peyton's future resting on him now. He is the man. The thing is, Peyton Manning's used to being the man. And that's kind of a weird thing. Every offense Peyton Manning has run has been his offense. It doesn't matter who's the OC. It's the one Peyton runs. And I don't see that happening with Gary Kubiak because, as you said, Peyton's expected to have this year and that's it. Whereas Gary Kubiak is John Elway's guy,
right,
his friend. So this is going to be an interesting one. There's still that whole awkwardness from when Peyton was cut from the Colts and he wanted to go to the Texans to really show up Jim Irsay. And Gary Kubiak said, Peyton Manning, I got Matt Schaub. We're good.
Well, in Kubiak's defense, Schaub had a really good year right before that.
Yeah, yes.
And then he tanked the next year. So.
All of a sudden he started reading from the Jay Cutler playbook and it all just went right to hell. And
ooh.
Ron's used to it. He's fine. He doesn't even notice anymore. So
I have a mute button for a reason.
What I'm getting at here is we're looking at a very new thing for Peyton Manning. I mean, he's taken pay cuts. He's going to be running a new scheme. There's going to be a lot more of a running game, which I will love to see because I don't think Peyton really had a great running game aside from 1 or 2 years. It was kind of a here and there thing. The Colts can't, I mean, they traded a first round pick for Trent Richardson. The Colts don't know crap about the run game. So how do you see the power struggle playing out and the shape of the offense for this year?
I have a lot of faith in Kubiak to be able to be both, kind of a mentor a little bit to Peyton Manning and still be tough enough to be his coach. I mean, he's the head coach, not the offensive coordinator, but Rick Dennison is pretty much the right arm of Gary Kubiak.
Probably was calling him offensive coordinator and I meant head coach, but it's one of those head coach / offensive
right.
coordinator.
Well,
we all know.
The thing is, even in Denver, you almost forget that Rick Dennison is the actual offensive coordinator. We still, it's Gary Kubiak's offense, Gary Kubiak versus, with Peyton Manning. So, but I think
we like to call him the Cougs.
Yeah, but it's pretty clear that Dennison is really just an extension of Kubiak and his offense. So whatever it's one and the same. They're the same guy. And first of all, Kubiak's been down this road before. He was an offensive coordinator when Elway, when he basically was Elway's backup. He retired. He comes back as the offensive coordinator to be the coach of the guy who had been the guy in front of him on the team. I mean, if there's anything that could be awkward about that, I think it would be that situation. And he's the guy that Elway credits for kind of getting him through and figuring out the way to help him finish those last years, and still be good, and to implement a run game with the Broncos and with Terrell Davis to help save Elway. So Elway didn't have to win the game with his arm, just like hopefully Peyton Manning won't have to do. So I think Kubiak can work with egos. I think he can work, and Peyton Manning has one. I mean, he is the nicest guy on the planet. But when it comes to football and it comes to the field, he's the guy. And I think that's one of the things that makes him really special. He's super nice and very conscientious, but he's tough and he's competitive. And he's not letting his backup Brock Osweiler back on the field even for one series or one play, because he wants to play football. And I think he wants to play so badly and wants to win. I think he will listen to Kubiak, and I think they'll work that out. I think he has a lot of respect for Kubiak. I'm only basing a lot of this on the rhetoric that's coming out now and that came out when Kubiak was hired, and all the conversations about Manning being able to work with Kubiak and vice versa. But both of them seem like they get the other's position, and their goal is to win games and to get to the Super Bowl. So however they have to do that, Kubiak's gonna probably massage his offensive scheme a little bit to make room for the kind of quarterback that Peyton Manning is. And Peyton Manning's gonna recognize that he's gonna have to allow for a running game and for a fullback and for things that he's not necessarily used to, but are going to be good for him, just the way they were good for Elway, and Elway had to kind of accept. So I'm confident and I'm optimistic. I don't think there will be a power struggle this year. I think if Peyton Manning were younger, there might be, but I don't think Peyton Manning and Kubiak would, they probably wouldn't be in the same offense, or that wouldn't be the situation.
Now, when we're talking about all the things that are going to make Peyton Manning successful as he heads down the home stretch, we've got to consider the personnel. And let's go over some of the personnel moves. We are at 50 minutes, which means this is going to be a much longer interview than I thought, because we spent way too much time on coaching it and Peyton Manning. But because it's so good.
And Jay Cutler jokes.
Yeah, that also happened. But since we're doing so well, I'm probably not going to cut anything out like I told you I would. Let's start with Julius Thomas. He leaves.
Oh, good. I want to talk Julius Thomas.
I also want to just kind of toss in there the rest of the tight ends, and we're going to also talk about the Owen Daniels signing. Owen Daniels, he follows the Cougs all over the place. He follows them to the Baltimore from Houston, and then he also went right on to Denver with them. He's a great addition and an awesome red zone player, I think. The combination of him and Virgil Green, who is an underrated pass catcher and good blocker, and the ageless Jacob Tamme, should be a good group to kind of seal up that tight end set. And then when you toss also in, you were talking about earlier, James Casey into that whole thing, that should offset the loss of Julius Thomas to Jacksonville for a staggering amount of money that the Broncos just could not match.
Right. I think it clearly made sense for JT. I mean, he knew he could get the money. He obviously has some great numbers that teams need, like the Jaguars. He was saying, show me the money, and Jacksonville said, all right. And Denver said, no way. And I'm glad Denver said that. I think a year ago, I might have been much more upset if we were talking about not being able to keep Julius Thomas. But both his attitude, his play, and what he was wanting just didn't make sense. So it was absolutely the right move for everybody. And I'm happy enough for him. I still, as I told, I wrote a blog on it, and I made a comment. I still kind of hope he doesn't learn how to block if we end up playing the Jaguars in the next couple of years, because that was the thing he just kind of was horrendous at and usually screwed us. But so if he learns how to do that and he blocks against us, I'm going to be pissed. But other than that, I'm happy for him. So, good luck.
Now, not just on the offensive side, but also on the defensive side, you guys got a good signing, and this is somebody who isn't as well known, and that is Darian Stewart. The signing was kind of under the radar, but this was big for the Broncos. Few safeties have played better football than Stewart did down the stretch, and also have given Tom Brady and the Patriots all they could handle in that short amount of time. Very underrated move, and one that could pay significant dividends for the Broncos immediately. Stewart has good size and is capable of playing both safety positions in the box and in coverage, which is rare, magical even, because that is completely unheard of. He's a former undrafted free agent who found a home with the Ravens last year and showed exponential improvement in his coverage abilities as the year went on. Solid player. He pairs well with TJ Ward at the back end of the Denver secondary. The real question is can he truly replace Raheem Moore?
I think so. I think Raheem Moore was good, but I never thought he was outstanding. He got a bad rap for the one play that he allowed, which was that fateful game against the Ravens, and I think he was good, but I think he's totally replaceable. And he's a little bit like JT. He was one of the better safeties in the league, so he was gonna get paid around the NFL by other teams, paid more than the Broncos were willing to or really had available to pay. So it was a good move for him. But I think Darian Stewart, like you said, he's kind of was sort of underrated, but seems to be kind of exactly the kind of guy that will be good coming into our scheme, especially with I think with a Wade Phillips defense. He likes a really aggressive defense, a tough, fast defense. So seems to me like he'll fit in well.
Now, not just in the backfield, though, but up front, you guys need some help with losing Terrence Knighton.
Yeah.
So they bring in Vance Walker. Seemed to play well enough with the Raiders to earn a multi-year deal with the Chiefs, but not effective enough for them to keep him at the price tag he was kind of commanding at the end. After being cut by Kansas City due to their ridiculous cap situation, the Broncos scoop him up and add some nice depth to the defensive line. He can play multiple positions there, and he'll be a good rotational player with Derek Wolfe and Malik Jackson. Will this end up being a blessing in disguise? And how funny is it that a guy has gone from the Raiders to the Chiefs and then to the Broncos? Because if he can make it to the Chargers, I'm pretty sure his family will just have a mental breakdown.
Or they also will probably they're going to have the biggest collection of the AFC West jerseys of anybody outside of the NFL shop. So, maybe they can make a little money on eBay or something. And our free agency didn't get near the headlines or the praise from fans this year because we didn't pick up any of the big names like it seemed like we did last year. We didn't even pay the huge bucks, which we didn't have and we didn't need to do. So a lot of these guys, as they were coming in, even as writers and as fans were like, yeah, what did he do, where he was? So I think as you look, a lot of these players were really solid, not necessarily stars, but that's exactly what we need. We need guys who can come in, who have experience, who are athletic and are versatile and can kind of maybe play different positions or at least move around a little bit and basically just be competitive. I think both the offense and defensive side in our new coaching staff, they fashion themselves as teachers and as like kind of true traditional coaches and can coach people up. And what they want are guys who are smart and who understand the game and understand the scheme and are athletic and can be plugged in and coached up to what they need to do to perform for the game plan that the coaching staff has.
Now, lastly, in kind of the best moves that they made, we're going to get into the very obscure. No one really knows, or is even, I don't think anybody's aware even, that they brought in a guy named Joe Don Duncan.
Yeah.
And the Broncos added him. He's a pretty versatile weapon. They got him in the first day of free agency, a guy that can play some fullback, some tight end, some H-back, some slot receiver even, whatever is really neat.
What, has he got a position for each of his names? What the hell?
Yes, he does. And
that's good.
Whatever is needed, and he can be there. He can be a real gem for them. Duncan wasn't overly heralded coming out of college, but he did well enough at Dixie State, which I have no idea where that's at, nor do I mean, I have zero clue, and I honestly don't care.
I'm guessing Mississippi? I don't know either.
He impressed the scouts enough to get an invitation to the Senior Bowl and the Scouting Combine, which just does not happen to a player from a Division III school. And after getting noticed, injuries kind of became a primary concern for him, and he was left out of the NFL in 2014. And he ended up coaching wide receivers back at his alma mater, Dixie State. Kubiak, he notices him, he targets him for the Broncos in this offseason, and he was signed to be a move player in the new scheme as someone that can play all those multiple positions. Very exciting prospect, and one the Broncos absolutely loved. Can you give us some insight into who this guy is at all?
Well, that was a really nice summary. I mean, you've got his resume, and that's kind of what we know. He embodies what a lot of some of these, not all brand new, but kind of early, young players we have, like 1, 2, 3 years on the team, guys that they really seem totally excited to compete. And I'm sure part of that comes from coming to a team like the Broncos where there's kind of a championship culture. It's always going to be exciting to be part of that, even if you end up making the team or not, just to be able to participate and to try. But one of our writers did interview Joe Don Duncan, and he was totally jazzed by this guy. Like, you've got to watch the film. I mean, he definitely seemed, like you said, very versatile. And again, I think it speaks to what Kubiak, kind of how he looks at players. He's not always looking at the guys who've already hit the big numbers. He's looking at the guys who have talent, and he's certainly been good enough at spotting talent, enough talent that he can coach them to be what he needs them to be or what he's expecting them to be, and recognizing that, he wants to get guys kind of on their way up, not necessarily guys that have already reached their peak. At the same time, he's good at finding some veterans who he believes, still have a lot in him that can be really useful and bring something to the team. So I think in the case of Duncan, Kubiak saw a guy that would totally be overlooked, partly because he just didn't go to a big school, didn't play in the big games, but has the size, has the skill set, and mostly has the versatility to really fit into his offense, which is pretty heavy. It's a 2 tight end set. So we picked up, I'm pretty sure, I was joking about it, but I think we picked up 4 tight ends in the offseason.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head, but I know that they have a lot, and I know that Gary Kubiak loves to use tight ends on a heavy rotation.
Yeah, we brought in Owen Daniels, we re-signed Virgil Green, Joe Don Duncan, James Casey, who's also kind of a fullback. I don't think we're going to have any trouble, honestly, replacing Julius Thomas, because the kind of scheme that Kubiak's going to run, he wants guys who are big and fast and want to block. Blocking was not what Julius Thomas wanted to do. He was great at catching. But Daniels and Duncan and Casey, those guys are, and Virgil Green, that guy, he loves to block. In fact, all of them have said in some of their interviews that they actually kind of pride themselves on liking to block, not necessarily catch the ball and make touchdowns. So I think, given what Kubiak wants to do with the offense, I think the guys we've got in there are going to be, honestly, probably do better than what JT would have done, because that wouldn't have been where he kind of wanted to shine.
Well, I would certainly hope that Virgil Green would want to block, considering he's 6'5", 275 pounds.
I know, that guy.
And so when people tell me that he's a underrated pass catcher, I'm just like, good Lord, he is going to destroy people. Let's go over some of the needs then that are left that they haven't really gotten taken care of. Center, tackle, nose tackle. Those are the 3 major positions that kind of have the biggest hole. Will Montgomery, he leaves. They did get Gradkowski from the Ravens, but he is kind of drifting close to being a bust at this point.
Yeah.
With players like Chris Meyer still out there, they could definitely go out and grab him, and he would kind of be a plug and play into a zone blocking scheme. You need quality zone blocking tackles. You have some guys that can fill that spot right now, but they're not zone blockers. They're road graders. You need the fast swing guys that can, pick and choose the guy they need to block very quickly. Just not something you really have there quite yet in the tackle position. You also need a nose tackle with Terrence Knighton's moving on to Washington. Wade Phillips runs a high-flying, a 3-4 attacking defense so you need a big guy right there in the middle. How do you kind of see them in the draft or with whoever's left in free agency, or is there any whispers how you kind of see them going after and kind of sewing up those 3 spots?
I thought we would have done it in free agency, and we really didn't. In fact, most fans were, at least the vocal ones, were really calling for more, O-line grabs in free agency. So I have to think, we definitely seem to be targeting some guys in, for the draft, because Kubiak even said, other than basically Luis Vasquez and Pro Bowler Ryan Clady, that O-line is not set, and we're hoping that Ben Garland and that Michael Schofield and these guys are going to step up, but they're new and they are green, and even if we get somebody in the draft, we're going to be in the same position, but that O-line is still a bit of a question. And so I wouldn't be sad if we went out and, picked up Chris Myers. I'm not sure if we could afford him or not. Maybe Elway's just waiting to hit, rock bottom price, because we don't have all that much money left. But it is a need. The O-line is a need, at tackle and at center, probably.
Now, it's way, way too early to make predictions, but we're going to make you do it anyway.
Excellent. 19-0, baby. 19-0.
Well,
you're going to irritate Kyle so much.
I mean, I guess, but we're still going to, I'm still going to say the full sentences. So if you want to go with 19-0 after that, then I can do it. Okay. Looking ahead at the schedule, this is actually a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah.
In addition to the standard divisional home games, you get to host Baltimore, Cincinnati, Green Bay, Minnesota, and New England.
Yeah, awesome.
For away games, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Detroit, and Indy. This is not an easy schedule this year.
Mm-mm.
It is maybe not, it's certainly not insurmountable, but everybody's going to have to be on their A game all the time. How do you see this team stacking up? And what is the real overall expectation for next year? Not just when it comes to wins and losses, but how far this team is going to be getting in the playoffs. And if nothing else, at what point can you say this 2015 season was not a disappointment? What is the minimum for you?
In terms of a record, or in terms of sort of the final, how it ends?
Well, the record for one, but I think most people, if your team is able to squeak in as the number 6 seed and make it to the Super Bowl, you still can say, well, we figured things out when it mattered the most. But
yeah.
Moreover in the playoffs, because I view the Broncos as a playoff team.
Right. I think, especially after last year, the expectation is actually a little less. I mean, if everyone's going to be honest with themselves, I think a lot of people don't really think Peyton Manning can get us back to the Super Bowl. Or, they hope he can, they'd like him to, but they're definitely skeptical that he can do it go that far. So I think what would be a huge improvement and considered a big success would be getting to the AFC Championship. And whether we made it to the Super Bowl or not, it would be, really competing well in that AFC Championship game. We have fully expected to beat the Colts. I mean, not that we thought the Colts weren't going to be tough, but it was a home game. And I think everyone was looking to New England. We kept talking about hoping New England was going to lose so that, we didn't have to go to New England to play there. And I think that whole cliche of, looking past your current weak opponent was totally true. That wasn't the only thing that went wrong, obviously. But so I think next year, getting to the AFC Championship would be considered a success, even if we don't want to totally admit that we'd be happy not going, with not making it to the Super Bowl. But more than that, it would be just this sort of level of competition that we are competing hard and to the final minutes in every game. That we don't have games where we get blown out or that we lose because we just played like crap, which is what happened last year. Even though our record was still good, we had some head-scratching losses, like the Rams game and the Bengals game. And so I think not having games like that where even if you lose, but it's a good game and you play well and you just don't come out on top, that kind of loss would be much easier to take and to deal with. And my personal feeling is always, I did not like going into the Super Bowl and Super Bowl 48 the way we did as the favorite, people thinking our offense is going to blow away Seattle. I hate that overconfidence. So I always like it to have to kind of be under the radar, people to not give you much of a shot, have a little chip on your shoulder that nobody really believes you can do it, and go into the season and you take a couple losses. I think sometimes a loss every now and then is good for the team, depending on kind of how that loss plays out and how you're coached afterwards. But, if we finish the season 12-4, I think that would be a success. And I think, we go to the playoffs and we definitely need to make it to the AFC Championship for people to be really excited and feel like it was a really good year.
With the level of talent on the team, I'd say that's definitely possible. Final question before we wrap up. Which game on this upcoming season do you see as like the biggest must win? Is there a game where you're like, look,
it's definitely New England.
Thank you.
It is definitely the Patriots at Mile High.
And I think that if Peyton Manning can win that one, the level of confidence is really going to radiate throughout the whole team and translate to off-season success.
Which one of these teams do you think is going to be the sleeper that kind of sneaks up on you, though? Because you got teams like Minnesota, Cleveland, and Chicago. You got Detroit in there.
You want me to say Chicago, don't you?
He way does.
No, I know better what I'm at.
You know what? I think all these games are tough. I mean, a sleeper might be like a Minnesota. Honestly, it might even be Oakland and Kansas City. I think our rivals, I would never think that our rivals are a pushover. Even when Oakland has been so bad, I'm always nervous to go play there because it's Oakland and they're mean and you never know. But I think our toughest games, Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Indianapolis and New England. Those would be tough. Detroit, that might be a game that sneaks up on us.
Well, and facing Aaron Rodgers is never an easy thing either.
No. But that's going to be a fun game because Bronco fans love the Packers. That's a team that you really respect them. They've got a lot of history. We beat them in the Super Bowl, so we feel, kind of good about that matchup. But Packers fans are great. That's a great franchise too. And so that's going to be a fun game.
All right. This interview's over.
well,
yeah, sorry about that.
I mean, everybody likes Packer fan. That's because there's Packer fans everywhere. Wisconsin's got like 9 people living in one ice hut, and that's all of the state. And everywhere you go, Packer banners everywhere. I'm in Alaska. The default team is the Seahawks by proximity, and I accept that. The number 2 team is the Packers. And I don't get it.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I don't know. There's a camaraderie with those cold weather.
No, they just like winning. That's all it is. You're 7 years old.
Well, that's true. That's why people are Steelers fans. They have no idea why, but because their parents were fans in the 70s because there was no other team that was winning. So other than the Cowboys.
That's why when you meet a Jackson, you refuse to accept it. You're like, what happened? Where are you from? Was like there's some sort of karmic debt or something like that you're paying off to society?
It's true. It's true.
And the worst part is they accept all that abuse. They're just like, yes, yeah, all of it. Just, I know. And worse. I pay money for this.
It's almost as bad as being a Buccaneers fan, though. That's got to be rough.
They had the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, their greatest player in history is, arrested for soliciting and all that. But, things.
It's true. That's true. Maybe. They were more relevant before than the Jaguars have ever been. So
true enough. Well, at this time, it is time for us to turn everything over to you. We'd like you to get your info out there to everybody. Twitter, website, anything for fans to watch for on the site, anything else, whatever you have, now is your time.
Oh my. Well, of course, the best Broncos coverage, I think, is the Mile High Report at milehighreport.com. And on Twitter. You can do at Mile High Report, as well as Facebook, which we push our stuff out quite a bit. But I was talking before the show, this staff truly does impress me. I'm one of the few on the staff that actually has any training whatsoever in journalism or writing. And all the guys and ladies that work on the staff just love football and love the Broncos and like to write enough to like do it for basically free multiple times every week. And so I don't think you can get a better, well-rounded blog on all kinds of aspects of the team than Mile High Report. And I definitely think we're better than like the Denver Post or something like that, of course. But so.
Man, you're slinging some journal.
I know. Actually, I do. I shouldn't really say that. I think.
Yeah, you should. What are they going to do? Come after you? They're not doing anything.
I know, right? It's not like I'm looking for a job there. They do have some good writers. I will give them some props. But there's some terrible media out in Denver that, that cover the Broncos, like some of the radio shows and some of the other bloggers, like just crap. Kind of.
Is the JH and Ozzy show still going on out there? Do you know?
I don't know. That doesn't sound familiar, but there's a radio host out here that does a show in the afternoon on 104.3 The Fan, and he's really a New England Patriots guy, so that says everything you need to know. And he asks the most boneheaded questions at the press conferences. I don't even know how he gets a press pass. I'm like, come on, Broncos, I want a press pass. I deserve a press pass. That's what I want to say right now on the radio. Denver Broncos, give me a press pass.
Well, that'll definitely guarantee you your spot next year.
Yeah. Well,
that's right.
Throw it out there, put it out on Twitter, the exact way in which you will fight and defeat this guy to earn your press pass. Earn it through combat. Who can argue?
We'll film it and we'll air it live.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can YouTube live.
Nice. Nice.
If this guy truly is a Patriots fan, you can pretty much guarantee for me to go ahead and do something shady to throw him up. You can count on that one.
Excellent. That's what I want.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Laurie. We've actually got to wrap this one up or else we're going to be way over time. So,
well,
thank you for coming in.
Having me on. It was great fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great. And the reason I let something like this run this long is because we're having a good time. And that is definitely something we had tonight. So we really appreciate you doing that.
Well, my pleasure. I can talk Broncos all day long, obviously.
Well, stick around for a minute after we wrap and we got more questions for you and stuff like that off the thing.
All right. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Once again, everyone, that was Laurie Lattimore-Volkmann, assistant coach or assistant editor of Mile High Report. Hell of a lot of fun to talk to. We have not had that much fun. I think, for me, you got somebody else who loves Peyton Manning and hates Tom Brady. That's the 1-2 cocktail. I'm just drunk with happy.
Yeah, definitely the best interview we've done. Not necessarily the best, but just the most energy we've had out of somebody for this week. I love bringing especially women on because, for one, they always know way more than what we know. I mean, Everybody knows way more than what we know, but they know way, way more than what we know. And they always have a good time. And they, of course, work twice as hard to 10 times as hard than any guy in this industry that just gets his foot in the door because he's male. So
definitely. And I think what impressed me the most about talking to Laurie was not just her knowledge of the game, but like the deep inherent love of the game. Like you can tell this matters to her and it makes her happy and it makes her family happy. And that's what we're all kind of looking for as football fans. When you become a diehard fan of your team, you want it to be something for you and your family and something to bring everyone together. And you know that she's got that. And that's super rad. Super happy.
Yeah, she knows a lot more than what she let on to in her email. When we had our email conversation, she was like, well, John, he's kind of the guy that does all of the stats and the draft stuff. I don't really know a whole lot. And then she comes on pre-show before you were able to join us, Kyle, and she's like, yeah, I know all these people. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, well, then why would you tell me that you didn't know anything? I mean, you know exactly how this whole show's going to go.
That's some Admiral Akbar traps right there.
I know. She got me good. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to throw you off topic. And in fact, when we were going through the rundown, she was like, oh, you forgot this guy and you forgot this guy. And I was like, well, thank you. And then it didn't matter because you guys went on and talked about the coaches and Peyton Manning for 43 minutes, and my segment was 11 minutes long.
Well, I am sorry that your segment was not Peyton Manning or the Cougs. And I will say this, Laurie, minus points for you for one thing. I specifically said we call him the Cougs because it's fun to say the Cougs, and you just bypassed that. And then you kept saying Kubiak or Coach Kubiak. That is not as fun to say. We believe in the Cougs. We do not believe in Gary Kubiak.
And I feel like we have the ability at this point, and I'm going to call this the Football is America bump, to force people into new nicknames. And the Cougs is going to happen. It's going to be there. I'm going to start doing it everywhere. And somebody is going to pick it up that's important. And they're going to call them the Cougs. And then it's going to be on MTV. And it's going to be just like when I invented the word ginormous.
Did you?
I'm pretty sure, because I said that stuff when I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
And then 10 years later, it was on MTV. And I was like, wait a minute. No.
Okay, but you also were convinced that you came up with the nickname the Amish Rifle for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then I'm Google searching it like, yeah, here we go, something from 4 years ago, and then you committed seppuku.
Yeah, I might have brain damage from concussions. I don't know. I played football and I was in the Army, so whatever. The NFL can't fix me, though, just like they can't fix the rest of the players. Anyway, let's go on to all of you fans. Thank you for joining us and supporting Laurie. She's great, and we're glad that you were able to join us for that. Go on to footballisamerica.com. Check out our shows there. You can find every single one of our shows. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/footballisamerica podcast. Find us on Twitter at FBIA podcast. You can also email us right at the show, team@footballisamerica.com. Send us your emails. Tell us how good or how bad we did. Tell us how great Laurie was and how we should all jump off a cliff because she should have just ran the whole show herself.
Yep. You can also find our show on iTunes, on Pocket Cast, on Stitcher. Give us a subscription, download a show, have a listen, regret that decision immensely, and then write a scathing review. We would appreciate that.
It's pretty normal. That's par for the course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. Have a great evening. I know, Kyle, we've got to get out of here. We talked to her about another half an hour after the show ended, and it's getting late.
Yeah, time to go fix them interwebs, as I do. We certainly hope all of you from Mile High Report had a great time listening. We certainly had a great time doing the show, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see you again.
Take care.
Thank you so much.